Welcome, everyone. Really happy to go through this session, which is Gateway for Assessors. So today, what we're going to do is go through some of the common forms that you see in Gateway, but we're also going to go through other types of processes or data that you can find in Gateway that's helpful all throughout the year. I think most assessors use Gateway when they're submitting values, whether it's in the late summer, early fall, and into December. But what we're going to do is go through and kind of show you some of the value of going into Gateway even now, just to map things out for the upcoming year. So just want to take a minute to go through the BLA. So BLA is responsible for oversight of property valuation in the state. So we have a regulatory an oversight. We train and we provide technical assistance for assessors. We're really pushing out as many videos and resources for you to watch either live, or this presentation will be also on our YouTube page. So some of the guidance items are, we help with classification of property, develop fair cash valuations, tax mapping. There's a bunch of different things, but I thought we would at least start out with this. So everyone that's an assessor knows that all property is assessed and taxed unless expressed exempt. So that pretty much sets the stage of what assessors do. They classify property, they discover it, they work on valuations. You're constantly doing that all throughout the year. As far as the gateway system, that's when you communicate all of those changes that happened, whether it's in the market, whether it's based on construction, whether it's based on some sales activity. Every year, 352 jurisdictions communicate those changes to us through this system called Gateway. As far as your field staff, we have 12 field staff all throughout the state. Each person has roughly 30 communities. And if you don't know who your field advisor is, we'll go through where to find that in Gateway. Sometimes we do have changes. We have either new personnel coming in or maybe some field staff that are retiring. So every year it's a good thing just to check and make sure that your field staff that is assigned is the same one you had, or if you're brand new to a community, who is your field staff from BLA. So the Bureau of Local Assessment has kind of two different ways of valuing for years, and Gateway is split up this way. We have our interim years, which are pretty much non-cert years. So just looking at the bottom of this, you could start with your cert year and you would have 4 interim years. As far as the reporting, interim years are reporting a lot less than what's in a cert year. In a cert year, we look at so many different things as far as your CAMA model. It's more of an in-depth analysis of what's happening in a community, and the reporting is a lot more in a cert year compared to an interim year. Some of the assessment information that we're looking at on the left-hand side, you can see a typical, these are some basic categories. And you can see on the right-hand side in a cert year. So there's a lot of different things that we look at or that you communicate to us through Gateway in a cert year compared to an interim year. Also, we have about 70 communities that are in cert in a typical year. So it's a 5-year kind of rolling or cycle. And then we have field staff that actually go out to your community to do quality assurance. Maybe do some inspections, work with the assessor in the office. That usually happens in a cert year and not in interim years. One of the other things for assessors that's administrated through Gateway is the 101 course. So every assessor should be taking the 101 course, whether you're a board member, part-time, even if it's a clerical staff. This provides kind of the whole story of what's done in an office, not only with just assessing, but it also goes into things like setting tax rates, any appeals, exemptions. This really encompasses most of the statutory responsibilities of assessors or assessing staff, and how do they fit in with other departments. So this is just kind of an overview of just what BLA is. And what I'm going to start with is one of the resources that we have. And this is just a quick, it's an 8-minute video, but I would rather play this. If you're looking for a copy, this is on our DLS YouTube page. So I'm going to play this. Bear with me 1 second.
Welcome to DLS Gateway. This presentation will introduce you to the DLS Gateway application. What is DLS Gateway? DLS Gateway is a web-based application suite used by local government officials and the Division of Local Services. Cities, towns, special purpose districts, and regional school districts all use DLS Gateway to transact business with the Division of Local Services. Local officials log into DLS Gateway to enter data and submit forms. Not all local officials need a DLS Gateway account. Officials in these positions do need an account: assessor, accountant or auditor, treasurer, collector, mayor, members of the select board or city council, or city or town clerk. The people filling these roles need to sign forms or submit data to DLS, so they always need accounts. Local officials who don't need to submit or sign forms sometimes have DLS Gateway accounts for specific business needs. For example, IT directors and staff often have Gateway accounts so they can create and maintain local accounts without DLS assistance. Town managers and town administrators often have accounts to monitor important processes like setting the tax rate, determining free cash, and submitting the Schedule A report. Not sure if you need an account? Contact DLS Gateway Support by calling 617-626-2350 or sending an email to dlsgateway@dor.state.ma.us. To obtain an account, the first step is to be listed as a local official in Gateway's Local Officials Directory. The directory is DLS's source for verifying that a person works for a specific jurisdiction. Your city, town, or district clerk will add you to Gateway's Local Officials Directory. Clerks can also open DLS Gateway accounts for new officials. DLS Gateway Support can open accounts for officials listed in the directory. You can find Gateway by going first to the DLS website. Using any web browser, go to mass.gov/DLS. Underneath the DLS banner, click I want to, then under Log Into, click the link for DLS Gateway Application Login. Once you get to the DLS Gateway login screen, create a bookmark in your web browser for faster access. It's a good idea to bookmark the DLS website too. Gateway is divided into modules. Each module represents a process that involves submitting data to DLS. Click the name of a module to select that process. After selecting a module, the first screen you see is the landing page. Instructions, tips, related information, and new features are all highlighted on the landing page. Links to any required or optional template files are in the downloadable template section. Many landing pages include a frequently asked questions box. Click any question to see the answer. Each module consists of forms to be submitted. They are listed on the navigation panel on the left of the screen. Select a form by clicking the form name in the navigation panel. Let's look at the sections within each Gateway form. The form name always appears at the top. The current form status is just underneath the name. Every form starts with No Status Found, which means you haven't entered and saved any data yet. The status will change as you enter, save, and eventually submit your data. Gateway always assumes you wish to work on the current form. To view data from a prior year, select the fiscal year, then click the Go button. Data can be entered in any field with a white background. Data fields with an orange background are calculated automatically or come from another form, so they cannot be changed. When you submit data to DLS for review, Gateway locks the data to keep it from changing. Locked data appears with a green background. Need to correct a mistake after you submit? No problem. Call your BLA or BOA advisor or DLS Gateway support to have a form unlocked. Some forms include a comment section. Click the Add Comment link to add a comment. Type your comment in the comment pop-up, then click Save. Some forms include a document section. Click the Upload New Documents link to upload a file. You can drop a file inside the box or click inside the box to browse to the file you wish to upload. Please note the maximum file size limit. Your file must be smaller than 25 megabytes. Each form has its own specific signature requirements. Forms cannot be submitted without the required signatures. Gateway will display an error when a required signature is missing. To sign a form, click the checkbox next to Check to Add Signature. Click the Sign button to complete the signature. Gateway adds your name, title, contact information, and the date and time of the signature to the form. To remove a signature, click the checkbox next to your signature. Then click the Remove button. Every DLS Gateway user has specific rights for specific forms. Your assigned rights determine what you can see and do. The action buttons at the bottom of each form are tied to your user rights. What happens after I submit a form? When you submit a form, Gateway automatically notifies the DLS staff assigned to your community or district. DLS staff review only submitted forms. When you finish working on a form, remember to submit. For some processes, like balance sheet and tax rate, DLS staff wait to start the review until all forms tied to that process have been submitted. Gateway keeps local officials informed by sending automated emails when certain events occur, like when you submit a form or when DLS approves a form. Gateway's local officials directory is the source for email addresses, so make sure yours is correct. Contact your city or town clerk if your email address needs updating. Need help with DLS Gateway? Contact Gateway Support. DLS Gateway support staff are available to assist you with any Gateway-related issue or question. Support is available Monday to Friday, except state holidays, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. For more information about DLS Gateway, contact Gateway Support or your BLA or BOA Community Advisor, and be sure to visit our website at mass.gov/DLS.
All right. Well, thanks for watching that. I know that some people might say, well, why did we start with that? One, it's a video that's out there that you can provide to any new assessing personnel, whether it's a new board member, a brand new assessor, maybe a clerk. This is a very high level explanation of what is Gateway. And Gateway, if you want to think of it, is how cities and towns communicate to us with assessment information, budget information, sometimes some local tax policy information. So Gateway is kind of that system where you have all these changes in the city and town all year, whether it's valuations or budgets, and every year you submit kind of what's changed. So from there, that video just kind of explains what it is. It also stresses, the local official directory. A lot of these things are things that you'll see in emails. You might see it in the 101 course. But I guess today, what I really want to emphasize is you can go into Gateway even when you don't have to, even when it's not valuation season. If you're brand new to a community, there's a lot of things in Gateway that you can learn about the community or your new role, as far as, how many sales you typically have, what were the typical increases in that community, how do I estimate growth for the upcoming year? How do I compare this year to last year? Who do I work with? What other department heads or colleagues input things into Gateway and when. So that's what we're really going to specialize on today, is kind of going in and just looking through some different areas. So let me just start with the navigation. So as far as getting to Gateway, if this is your first time getting to it, if you don't have it bookmarked, if you go to the Division of Local Service web page, and you go down to the bottom right here, this is your DLS Gateway application login. So once you click on that, it's going to take you over to this page. Some of the things that you can see on this page, some of the things are not password protected, so they're available for reporting to the general public or people without login or credentials in Gateway. So some of these things, if you click on them, are available without a sign-in to Gateway. There's also shortcuts to the DLS webpage. If you have some issues, technical issues with Gateway, you can contact support. Some of the reporting, which we'll go over, the Bureau of Local Assessment, Bureau of Accounts, and then some other calculators or other things. So this is the landing page that you would use. Everyone has a login and a password. And as you saw in that video, some things are locked down as far as, what you see as far as different options. Assessing data is usually entered into two different areas. One is a cert year. So you would have your certification tab, and then a typical year, and some of the every year forms are under tax rate. So if it's your cert year, this is the tab that you really want to click on. As that video said, this is the landing page. And this is the way that DLS, whether it's BOA or BLA, this is how we communicate to you. So every year, the staff at BLA goes through this page. We add any links, whether it's a CCR form, maybe some templates. All of this stuff is reviewed every year. And as we get into, the 1st of July, this will be all updated. Some things are ready to go now. But every year you should come to the landing page and kind of see what has changed and what kind of information would be helpful for setting valuations for the upcoming year. As far as your advisors, this is where you would click. So if you're brand new to a community, whether you're on the board or whether you're the full-time assessor, part-time assessor, every community is assigned a BLA advisor. So just by clicking on that, you can find out the email, phone number, and who is assigned to your community. As far as any issues or technical issues, DLS Gateway, here's another link for it. So you'll see some of these things in multiple places, and that is by design. The last thing we want you to do is have a million windows open to go back to this. So sometimes these links or these resources are redundant, but it's to shorten your time and get you the right answers, and also to give you some ideas. In a typical year, we get all sorts of questions from assessors as far as, any new forms, or maybe they're looking for a template. I would say in the 3 years that I've been here, almost 75 or 80% of those questions were answered with some of the resources on the landing page. So, you can take some time before the valuation process starts and just kind of click, what is this? What is an Excel CCR report? What are the instructions for updating templates? You can start clicking on this now. You don't have to wait until it's the busy season and there's a lot of pressure on because you just got your, maybe your valuations back from a vendor. You have a classification hearing in two weeks, and you're on that kind of that very fast pace, and that's when you don't have time to click on these. That's when you're just trying to set the meeting up. You're working on your handouts. There's just so much going on in that busy season. But now in May, you might as well start looking at this stuff. There's not going to be huge changes on this landing page. So even if you looked at the FY24 page compared to the FY25 page, very similar. There'll be definitely some changes, but they're not drastic changes from year to year. A lot of this stuff stays intact. Just going down with the certification, because they're every 5 years, you would have to click on your specific year. So any of these reports or work plans that you're working on, you would have to pick your community. I'm going to pick on Melrose, and I believe 23, 22. So what you're seeing here is it will only come up for the year that they were under. So I can't search for 23, 24, 25 for Melrose because their cert year was in 22. So if I'm brand new to a community and Melrose is my community, and I just want to see what kind of timelines they had, maybe I just want to revisit what my timelines were the last cert. You can start clicking on these work schedules. You can start looking at, okay, what's the timeline for all these different processes? So even though it might not be a new community to you, you might want to start planning this out. And just, looking at this, you might say, oh, well, I planned on getting the tax rate set in the middle of November. I'm going to try and go earlier this year. I'm going to try and shoot for the middle or the end of October. So that you would have to not only change it as far as tax rate set, but the public disclosure. You would have to change all of these dates to go backwards at least, a couple weeks, 3 weeks, to get to that sooner tax rate goal. So this is very helpful, not only for brand new assessors, but also, what happened the last cert. I think it's really good for planning. There's different program components. So sometimes you use different vendors and all of that information is there. Maybe you use certain vendors for cert years. So all of that stuff is tracked. It's also tracked as far as, GIS information. So if you're brand new to a community, and you want to see, what contracts do I need in place? Who does, personal property compared to mixed use or commercial? What was in place before? This is a really good thing to start planning things out. You can even plan it 2 years in advance. But if you have nothing, or you have kind of some scattered information as far as your resources in the office, this is not a bad place to go. And then, all sorts of other things for the work plan. As far as, just different, let's see. As far as some of the CCR stuff, if you're looking to, upload things, or if you're looking to see what's in the system, all of this information is tracked historically. So again, Melrose had their cert back in 22. You can start putting all of this information, out of Gateway off to the side and start comparing what different trends happened. Are the prime lots or the base lots, are they still around that price? Is there any changes in zoning or any changes in my neighborhoods? You can use this as kind of the template and really get prepared. All of the notes are still in here too. So if you're brand new to a community, or you just want to refresh what happened with the last cert, a lot of this stuff is still there, all the way down to some of the stats too. So there is a huge value of going back, whether it's apartment buildings, residential. You can start going through and really looking at all these different things, including the notes. So this is going to really establish a benchmark of the last cert, this happened. And then you can start comparing what's happened in the market, or what's happened in your camera model currently. So there's going to be deadlines, there's going to be assessment data, there's going to be vendors used. So you might have, like I said, different vendors depending on what type of property you're valuing. Commercial numbers, if you don't have a lot of commercial and you're just looking at, what changes happened, what techniques were used. All this information is stored And we also have the directives too. So directives are something I don't want people to look at them every 5 years. I want them to look every year. And in theory, this kind of outlines what's going to happen. Cyclical inspections seem to be pretty much on everyone's directives. So cyclical inspections, as everyone knows, are, every property has to be inspected once every 10 years, and that's a rolling cycle. So if we're looking at 2024, and you fast forward to 2034, every parcel should be inspected. So when your cert's coming out, when we're looking at inspection reports, you should be up to date on all your inspections. Your inspection date should not go further than 10 years back. So if that's one thing that's on your list, this is another thing to show maybe your finance director, or maybe to bring out during budget season to say, I know that we go out to 600 properties a year to inspect, but we need to do 1,000 or more to hit our goal. So the next cert, that we can take this kind of off the list. This is something that came up with the last cert, and it could be used as communication during the budget process. There's other things in here about land schedules, condominium valuations. These are going to be unique directives to your cert and your community. And again, don't push this to the side. Actively work on these, year after year. Don't wait until that next cert to say, well, I didn't have time. We just didn't look at it. This should always be a work in progress that starts right after that cert year. So again, there's all these other areas you can look at. So this is the certification tab. Now, when we get to the tax rate tab, this is going to be your typical year. So this is going to be, only 70 communities are in cert in a typical year. So this is everyone else that's not in cert. Some of these forms that are on this tab are used for cert years and interim years, but as far as the certification for assessors, this tab is only used when it's a cert year. So going down just kind of the list, you have your omitted and revised, you have your growth information. Here's all your kind of, I'll minimize this so we're not seeing all of this. But here's a lot of your just assessment stuff. So you have your LA13, you have the upload, you have your valuations, kind of all of that stuff for assessing is listed here. And depending on the role in your community, you're probably involved in other things, or you might be involved in other things. So things like the levy limit, you might have to review that or work with other departments or staff on other forms. So depending on what your role is in your specific community, some of these other forms are things that you'll look at too. We definitely look at the LA5 and sometimes the recap sheet. So on this landing page, again, this is how we're communicating to you. So, how to enter Prop 2.5 votes. This is actually a really good video or a guide to watch or read. If you're changing tax policy, so say you're implementing some changes to exemptions, maybe you just passed the senior means exemption or residential exemption, any of these tax policy kind of decisions, some of the things you need to report to DLS so that we can open fields up or change things in the background. So things like the MDM1 form, unless we know about a certain tax policy decision, some of those entry or some of those functions are not open for everyone. It's only the people that pass the tax policy. So it's very important, if any tax policy changes, that you take that information and provide it to us, and we're more than happy to answer any information. If you don't know who to reach out to and you're an assessor, call your BLA field advisor. They will get you either the answer or the person that can provide the answer. So your direct person or contact at DLS is your BLA field advisor. They don't have all of the answers, and sometimes it's a BOA question or it might be a DARB question. They'll get you that email contact or provide you with a name of who to contact. So again, searching, just this page is, all the changes. We talk about the LA5 form. There was some changes last year. We talked about the growth form. There's anything that changes and some just standard things that live on this page. As you scroll down, some of the changes or information on finance forms are listed here. The BOA advisors are listed here also. So you'll see all sorts of resources on this landing page, along with some templates that should help when you're trying to set values or you're putting your information into Gateway. So not a bad page to look at. Again, now, looking at, okay, I have this coming up. I just want to make sure that I'm ready to go. How do I, put in new growth? If you're looking at debt exclusions or anything like that, there's calculators and resources for that. So there's a lot of information there. There's also FAQs. That video at the beginning talked about FAQs. Those exist in the actual forms, but also on the landing pages too. So one of the big things that that we're trying to do at BLA is to build out the help section. So if you're looking at this page right here or any page in Gateway, over to the right-hand side, there is this help section or this help button. My request was to make this 100 font, to make it bold, to make it, highlighted in yellow. Not everyone knows that it's there. So this help section is for whatever page you're on. So if you click this, this is going to go to the tax rate page. And you can see there's all sorts of different pages or help options. So if you click that button and you're in the LA3, it's going to bring up LA3 resources. If you're in the LA4 and you click the help button, it's going to bring up the LA4 help section. If you're in the MDM1 or the veterans exemption, it should bring up all of those resources. So one thing that we have access to at BLA now is we actually get to edit our forms in Gateway. And that's going to be extremely important for us because we're going to try and put as much information in that form. So what does that mean? The top 5 questions that people have with, say, the LA3 process. Well, those have to be addressed in the help section for the LA3. That's where we're going to start. So we're going to take all the feedback, all the questions that we get throughout the year, all the common kind of concerns or pain points, and that help section is going to address all of those. So some of it is not built out. It does take a while to format this in, but I will say we are investing time and resources into building this out so that when you're in a specific form, you can click the help section and you have all the information. And most likely, if it's a common question, it's addressed right at the top, right there for you. So that's going to take a little while. Just work with us because we're using BLA staff to do it. But it's going to be a really good change, and I think everyone's going to welcome it. So again, that's a help section. If you're not familiar with it, depending on what form, if I go on the LA4 and I click help, this help section goes right to the LA4. It addresses some of the items. So this is something that was existing. This is going to be more robust in the future. You don't hold me to it, but we are looking at embedding YouTube videos, kind of tutorials in this space. So anyone that's familiar with iframes, our intent at some point in the near future is to embed iframe videos of the LA4 process. And so when you click on help in Gateway, your answers are there. You're not toggling back out to, another a web page or another resource. That everything's kind of in Gateway to help you. So again, there's a lot of things that we're trying to do. And I think that it's a work in progress. It takes a long time to put this in. And we are in the process of upgrading kind of the software used, which will allow us to put in videos. And I think that's a great advancement. All right, so I think everyone for the most part knows about, the LA4 process, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but what I want to do is kind of just go down to some of these other reports. So from year to year, you're comparing kind of what happened in your community. So from the time that establish valuations, say you send your tax bills out, after, January 1st, from there on, you start kind of rolling over your CAMA system, you start putting in changes, you're doing inspections, you're looking at sales. All of this information is getting changed, updated, added to your CAMA model. And when you actually import or key in your LA4, you want to know what's changed. What was a market change? What was a growth change? How many parcels were added? How does this year stack up to last year? So in order to really look at that at a high level, the LA4 is actually a good report to look at. When I was an assessor, I would use this as communication to my board. So when the values are ready to go, when we're looking at either approving them or we're in that process, we start putting things into the LA4. I would actually print this out and bring this to a board meeting and say, these are some of the changes that we're seeing. We added only 9 parcels for single family. The overall went up, 8.2%. And you have all of your different changes from FY23 to FY24, not only for the valuation, but also for the parcel count. You might have a large apartment complex that's converting into condos. There's all sorts of things. So this is a really good form to provide to your board or maybe to your finance director or your elected officials. If something is changing quite a bit, you want to let them know. You want to look at, okay, what's changing from year to year. Any of these big changes that don't track, or maybe it's a negative, you might want to have, what's happening with those values. So kind of going through, here's the total class values and what's changing. Some of this this definitely does impact any tax policy with shifting rates. So sometimes commercial values are not as appreciate a different rate than residential values. And sometimes that impacts your ability to shift. So having this information at a very high level for either finance director, elected officials, management is not a bad thing. Even if it's not 100% done, you're starting to see things. You might have a couple inspections you have to do. Maybe you're reworking some tables, but for the most part, you're starting to see the changes that are happening. So this is something to communicate, to your board, elected officials, or even to look at yourself as values are coming in. So another thing to look at is your LA13 statistics. So one of the most common questions in a city or town hall is, what's going to be growth next year? What's happening? And if you're a 653 community, that's so hard to answer, because if you're 653, that means you allow growth all the way up to June 30th. So if you're asking me on May 23rd, what's going to happen up until June 30th, I don't know. Sometimes that's, the busy season as far as people taking permits. Maybe there's a large project that's going to come in that changes the use of a property, or something's going to change. Maybe there's a demo of an existing building. So a lot can change. So how can we get some number out that's maybe a little conservative or a little less than your averages? How can you kind of communicate without saying, I have no idea? This form right here will actually go over kind of 3-year averages. It will go over, just different growth kind of numbers that happen. So you can see your 3-year averages is on growth. Maybe you're looking to compare this year to say, wow, this seems like a big year for growth. Is this typical in this community, or does this happen from year to year? You can start looking at this, and again, you can start going backwards too. So if you're trying to do a study of what the 3-year average was for, 10 years back, even further, you can do that by actually just clicking on these historical numbers. Now, I will say that some of the forms that have been updated you might not be able to go back. So any new forms might have a limit to the first year that they were created in Gateway. But for the most part, at least with growth, you can start putting in, 3-year averages and go back like we're looking at back into 2016 to see, what was the typical increase from year to year. So again, using this historical sort option or this historical function allows you to go back and kind of look at more than 3 years. If you want to go back 6 years or 8 years or 9 years, you can do that. So that's something that's extremely helpful. I'm sure, as budgets are coming together, maybe a month ago, a lot of finance directors reached out to assessors to say, well, what are we going to have for growth this year? This is, something that you could use to answer that question at a very high level, and you can provide to the finance director to kind of support the numbers you're giving. So as far as just different things in Gateway, there's a lot of really good forms in it, and let me see if I can bear with me one second. So some of these forms you can export it out to Excel. This is actually something that I found extremely helpful. And it's kind of funny how I would use this. So sometimes you want to find out, how many communities have submitted, what are certain timelines, who's assigned to things. So this growth report will tell you kind of the average time it takes for different forms to be from first submitted to date approved. So if you're going through, and especially this happens during your busy season, you might be getting some pressure to say, when are the forms approved? Like what's happening out there? You can actively go through and see, who's in the process, how long it's taking, our communities around me approved. This report changes every day. Anytime there's an update with someone submitting something or something approved, this form is kind of a live form out of Gateway to just provide you some time metrics and some awareness of how long things are taking. And just looking at this form, there's a lot of 11s and 10s. I will say to everyone on this webinar, please plan for delays. Please get things in early. There's always things that come up. And if you're all the way at the end of the timeline, sometimes there's just not enough time to fix things. So what we're seeing out there is a lot of people that might have a historic time schedule as far as submissions. Maybe historically they've always done classification hearings on this date, but things are coming up. Even the vendors are having, some issues with, getting people into those jobs. So there's 2 or 3 weeks that are added on to a typical schedule, whether it's, waiting for certain things or waiting for a vendor, or even working with us. If there's 30 communities all coming in at once, it's going to take a little longer to approve things. So, you can start looking at this year to year. You can compare yourself with any of your peer communities to see what the timeline is, and possibly use this to advance your timeline for FY25. So as far as other things, there's a lot of different things, and just like I'm doing, you can start clicking on different things. There's a lot of forms in here that you might use in a typical year. There's other things that you use, like I said, once every 5 years. So there's all sorts of ways to kind of go through things. But if you're looking too for, just statuses during the year, this is a good form to pull up. If you're looking for communication from the assessing office to maybe provide to the mayor's office, the board of select, the select board, or finance director, this does have the last action, who did it, the dates. So you can kind of go through to get a feeling of how long things take, when things were approved, as it's going on. So this is a status of tax rate form, and as things start going in, These dates start going from submitted to approved to entered. You have all those different things that are happening. So if you're looking for that report, it's right at the bottom of the LA4. And I mean, you can even look at last updated by. So if you're looking at, who does what as far as, different forms, and you have a question about, the LA4, well, Mary Oliver did that, but Scott did, the LA13A. So you can see all the different people, whether it's BOA, BLA, you can see, who's worked on it. So this is really important to understand communications instead of just sending something out to, just the general DLS Gateway account. You can go in and email the person that maybe worked on this last year or that's currently working on your community. And again, these are all timelines. This is some time intelligence to prepare for the upcoming year. So all that information is specific to that year, to that community. So lots of good stuff there. As far as the LA3, again, a separate landing page. So if you have a question, has anything changed? Where do I get templates? How do I better understand the LA3 uploads? There's all these different kind of links that are on these pages. So please spend some time, kind of going through and looking at, all these different resources. And if there's something that's not here, or if you have something that you feel that it's important, we'll absolutely add it. This is a work in progress that we review every year. Some of this stuff stays year to year, but there's a lot of things that are used every year. The LA15 is a nice form to look at also. So if you're brand new to a community and you're looking at, what's my typical submission as far as arm's length transactions, what are the changes from year to year, how many sales are used for the sampling. You can use this form not only for the current year, for last year, but you can go back. You can start looking at all sorts of information that's in here. So it's not only for the current year, but it's also for previous years that are out there. So feel free to kind of go back, as a manual or some resources. You can see in certification years, this form doesn't come up. So 17 was a certification year. So if you see that, you cannot use that form. You'll have to use 18 or 16. But if you're building out, as the assessor or as the board, what a typical year is, what is a typical ASR? What's a typical COD? How does this compare to previous years? All of your answers are in here by going back historically. What kind of adjustments do you need in a typical year? Are there any notes that are in there? So you can start pulling this out to create kind of that benchmark or that metric to compare your valuations that are going in to everything in the last 10 years, everything in the last 5 years. Some of this information you can get out of the Canvas system, but some of the stuff you can get right out of Gateway. And this stuff goes in year after year through the LA3 process. Your ASRs are adjusted based on your arm's length transactions. CODs are calculated. And again, you can go back from when you started or maybe from when you were in another community or before you started in that community just to see what's happening. So there's a lot of different things that are out there. There's quartile reports. And again, don't think of it so much as that current year. Think of it in previous years. If you're just trying to make sense of this stuff, definitely look at previous kind of years. And again, there's all sorts of other reports that you can look at for the LA3. I'm going to spend a couple minutes on this because I feel sometimes in city and town halls, even if you've been there for a while, the big picture, who does what form, who's in Gateway, who's not in Gateway. So if you haven't looked at this, I would encourage you to look at your community. So again, we'll pick on Melrose. So you can go in by city and town. You can go in by your specific community. And you can go into departments, you can go into roles, or you can just do the whole community. So what I want to do here is kind of look at, okay, before I start submitting things, I want to make sure that everyone is updated in the system. I want to make sure that there's an email address. I want to make sure that things are accurate. I want to make sure that if someone's retired and moved to another community, that their information's not here. The reason that you do that is because there's lots of automated notifications that go outside. And I think that if your email address is not working, if those notifications are not getting to the right person, then you're not getting that feedback from Gateway. So especially this time of year, if there's any changes in elections or appointments, whether it's in the assessing office or maybe it's a treasurer collector, maybe it's a finance director, you want to go through because all sorts of notifications are going to go from Gateway out to your community. They might go to the assessors, they might go to someone else. So as a team player, and just to make sure that everyone's in the loop, it's not a bad thing to go through this list. Bear with me 1 second. So there's a question about OPEB. Just bear with me. I will take that offline and I'll have an answer. I'll communicate that to BOA. And as far as a calendar of what forms are due and what for cert year, absolutely. So as far as, just different tax rate things, actually, so calendars, we'll start with a cert year because that's a little easier. Let's see, work plan. So say I'm brand new to Melrose and I don't know as far as, when things are done or if it's a cert year, this is not a bad template to use as far as disclosure. You don't have to use every year. But there are, DOR review, you want to build that out. So I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, I would take out public disclosure for interim year and I would put in, maybe board review. If you're the assessor in a community and, the numbers are done by the vendor, you've looked at them, you want to allow some time for the board to look at them too. So even though this work schedule is more for a cert year, public disclosure could be replaced with, board of assessor review or something to that effect so that, you have a little time to look at it. So to answer the question on a cert year, you can use this kind of calendar and maybe it was too late as far as the whole process last time. So you can use this as a template to go back. As far as a municipal calendar, we have some resources online as far as when things are submitted. You can start the process, and I believe it's Yarmouth that has things ready almost the beginning of July. So as far as what forms are due, when can you start submitting that? If things are ready to go in July, you can start submitting that. I would say that most communities are a little later, but you could use this resource. Just bear with me 1 second. So as far as a calendar for your specific, when things are approved, this is your timeline and that changes from year to year. So that's one place you can look at it. If you're looking for a peer comparison, so you're looking to see what other communities did, let's see, that's going to be, you can export this to Excel. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. So all of these are in Excel based on a date. So you can start doing some time intelligence to say, what is the earliest community as far as LA4 submissions? These are all your different forms. So I would say you might want to know what your peers are doing as far as dates, like who's doing it. And again, you have the community assigned. So assessors can reach out, say if let me just look at one. Attleboro. So if I'm looking to say, how does Attleboro get their, LA4 in August, I can call that assessor in Attleboro and talk to them as far as the timeline. So I would say you can sort by kind of this to find out in general, out of all the 352 jurisdictions, what's the average time? What's an early time? And then if you want to go earlier, I would say reach out to that assessing office and say, how do you prepare? What can you share your timeline with your office as far as getting things ready to be submitted earlier? But I would say this report can define kind of your timelines of submissions. As far as the order of things in an interim year, I think I would pretty much have everything ready to go and submit everything kind of in a process, but I would have my sales, everything ready to go to put into Gateway. So if that's a question, there are some best practice kind of resources. More than happy to provide those. But if you're looking as far as peer analysis to find out what's happening with other assessing offices, this is a report that you can sort by date, and then you can contact the assessors to say, like in Yarmouth's case, how are you ready that early? Do you start things the fiscal year before? When do you wrap up your sales review? They might be a January 1st and not a 653 community for growth. So that allows them to go a little earlier. But this is a good resource as far as time metrics and just benchmarking with other assessing offices. So from here, I went over a lot, and this is going to be something that we're constantly building out. So this is a very basic level, and there's a lot of different forms that are in Gateway that we will be having future kind of sessions on. So I would say this is part one as far as a series of assessors with Gateway, but I do want you to go in. The takeaway from this is to go in, navigate around, start clicking on things, and seeing what's out there. Some of the numbers, as long as you don't hit submit. So if you save numbers in Gateway, there's a thought out there that we're looking at numbers that are saved. We're not. If you want to start putting prelim numbers in to see how they work with other forms, you can do that. If you hit submit, that's coming over to us. But if you hit save and then the next day you wipe out those numbers, you can use Gateway for that. I would say develop a plan with your, the municipal finance officials in your community about that. But there is, you can save things even right now. There's a lot of benefit to doing that. Also, another thing too is if you're not an assessor and you're waiting for the values to come in, you can start putting some of the other forms in. You don't have to wait. It's not a baton where you hand off to the next person and then they start their process. People can start filling forms out. As long as you don't hit submit, you can go in and edit it. You can remove all that information. And I will tell you from the very top, we don't have time to look at all the stuff that's just saved and not submitted. The review process for us starts when something's submitted or a phone call comes from an assessor to say, hey, can you take a look at this? Other than that, you can submit or you can save things in Gateway for the next year. You can start putting things in. That can happen. That can be a best practice to just see kind of what's happening with that year. So as long as you don't hit submit or you don't call us to look at it, we're not going to look at it until you say it's time for us to look at it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to some questions. I know that everyone probably has a busy day today. More than happy to answer any questions in the question and answer section. So let me see. So MDM1 page. So update on MDM1. as far as the form, we've reached out to all communities. I think we've had the highest participation, and everyone's entered, submitted. So that process is turned over to a reimbursement process. I'm more than happy to get some updates, possibly at the summer conference about that. But there is a whole process as far as the money coming back, the approvals. So the big thing for assessors as far as the MDM1 is not missing that deadline, getting everything in, hitting submit, and then there'll be a process as far as approving that form and then working on reimbursement numbers. So that's outside of BLA, but that is ongoing. If you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to me or the field staff at BLA. And again, we can forward that request to someone that can give you an answer on your specific community. Let's see. So there's a question, Tristan asked a question about, can 653 communities be added somewhere so we can see it? Those resources, you can combine it. So there is an Excel list of both of those. Tax policy reports are on our website, and you can combine kind of the towns. Do we have a report that has both of them? We do not, but it's something we'll add to the list. There are some custom data sets that we'll work on. So right now, a lot of our reporting is based on printing, an 8.5 by 11, kind of, a few columns, but to make everything kind of appear on one page. We are entertaining, changing that to more of a data set. So that will allow us, multiple fields. So if you're looking at things like tax policy or year to year, it might have 20 columns that would never fit on a small page, but because people are using them in Excel, or maybe they're using a portion of them, that seems to be a trend going forward. So Tristan, I'll add that to the list as far as future development for data sets. If you're good with, iLookup or Excel skills, you can combine those too. More than happy to provide those. YouTube for the LA3, absolutely. So Jen is going to send out some additional resources. There are some links. So yes, there will be there is a few LA3 videos for time trending, how to import files. So we can provide that with an email after this, not a problem. Let's see. Okay, I think I answered everything. I don't have an answer on OPEB. That's more of a Bureau of Accounts question, but as far as reporting, I know that some of that stuff is public facing, and some of the stuff does filter from Gateway out to the reports. That's one thing that I want everyone to know is some of those reports are updated as things happen. So that growth submission report that shows all the dates, as things change, that's constantly getting updated. So if you check on that report in the morning during the busy season, it's going to change compared to the end of the day. So if you're really looking for the latest kind of stats, there are some forms out there that feed directly out to whether it's Logi, which is a report writer that we have, whether it's an Excel file, whether it's on our website. As soon as that changes from submitted to approved, that information's out there. So I will work on some resources about identifying all of those. And I think that will be the next kind of topic for Gateway is how does this information go out? Going back to Tristan's question about how can we kind of match these things up. I can show you how to do that, not only for all the years in the past, but also as the years going on. How many 653 communities have been approved as of today? Where are they located? When did they submit their LA4? All those questions can kind of be answered, but we need to create these kind of robust data sets so that you're not taking 5 different reports and trying to merge them together. And we have over 50% of BLA staff has worked in the assessing field and assessing offices. And we have a pretty creative group. So a lot of these resources that you're looking at and bringing up, we have expertise on staff that can definitely build those and communicate what those needs are. So we'll work on that. And I just want to thank everyone for checking in today. And there'll be a part 2 coming out. And thanks, Jen and the DLS staff for hosting this. And everyone have a great rest of the day.